It's Katie Rose, straight up with a twist. All right, what's up, humans? This is Katie Rose, straight up with a twist. It's been a crazy, crazy week for me. I'm actually choreographing high school musicals and helping the children of our future. Today, we're going to be talking about disaster dates. I've been on a couple of them, and my awesome guest who's here with me today has been posting about her ridiculous dates, and I just had to bring her on. So here with me today, I have Kara May Adamo. Hi, Kara.
Hi.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I was like, this is great content for my podcast. So I will start by saying that when I saw your story, which a lot of people, they'll be scrolling on Facebook and then they see a long story and they're like, nah, that's too long. I'm not going to go through this. But even just the way that you pitched it from the get-go, you're like, I know you might scroll by this, but it might be worth it for you to take a little stop, you know? And I read it and I was like, I mean, this sounds like a pretty normal story until the end of it. And I was like, this is brilliant writing. I made my husband read it. I was like, you have to read it. He's like, why am I reading this? It sounds like all of your other dates. I'm like, just wait for it. And then he got to the end and he was like, oh my God. And I was like, I've been on a few myself. I had a guy, well, first of all, I've had a very, I had a very healthy dating life before I got married. I don't want to say I've been around the block, but I've had my fair share of dating and hookups, and I definitely lived for sure. And it's funny because my husband knows all about them because he was my best friend before we even got together, which is hilarious. So there's no hidden, anything. He knows it all. One sentence that a guy told me once, he said, "You are more beautiful than a unicorn's vagina."
What?
And I'm like, that is something I will literally never forget.
What Melissa Frank is that shit? You are more beautiful than a unicorn's vagina.
I'm like, first of all, vaginas aren't that pretty. I mean, It's like layers. It's like
no, they're not. And even if you're like Georgia O'Keeffe and you think they're beautiful, a unicorn specifically.
I was like, I guess I'm unique. Thanks so much. And then one of my favorite stories, and it was really like kind of scary at the time, but I went to Lee and Rick's oyster bar. You ever been there? Shucking the oysters.
Love it.
And I was hanging out with my two gay friends and they were like, oh my God, this shucker guy is so cute. This shucker guy, he's so hot, Katie. You have to ask him out. And I'm like, I am not doing that. And I was like, no. I'm like, no. And they're like, no, Katie, you have to. So they like make him come over and talk to me. They're like, he's totally flirting with you. And they're like, let's give Katie's number to him. So I'm like, you guys, I'm like, okay, but fine, whatever. Do I really want to date an oyster shucker? Like, I don't know. So I had dated at this moment in my life, I was like dating around a lot. And I was doing the Tinder thing and the Plenty of Fish thing. And honestly, for me, that was like brand new. And I was kind of tired. And I had a roommate, my best friend was living with me at the time. And I thought, I'm really tired. I was like, you know what? I'll just invite this guy over, which you never do this. You do not invite people to your home. But I was like, I'm just, I met him at the bar. He lives down the street. Okay, I'll just invite him over. So I invite him over to my house.
Okay. So wait, you don't know. This is just like.
I do not know this person. So he comes over and we're like, let's just watch a movie and get to know each other. I'm like, let's just hang out on the couch, talk. And I made it very clear. I go, this is what's happening. You're going to come over and you're not staying the night. You're only going to come over for 2 hours. I literally gave him a window. Okay. I was like, this is your window because I'm inviting you to my home. So my friend Katie was like, all right, I'm going to go out. You guys have fun. I'm like, okay. So she gets in the car and him and I had already been like chatting for like 30 minutes. Like she was getting ready to go somewhere. And I'm like, he's like nice enough. And he's like telling me about his past. And all of a sudden he's like, yeah. And he's kind of like uppity, like as if he had like as if he had a cup of coffee or something. Like he was kind of uppity. So all of a sudden he's like, so I have something I have to tell you, which that's never a good way to start. And I'm like, oh no. what is this going to be? And he's like, so I'm just going to show you my badge. He's like, so that you know I'm telling the truth. He's like, so I was a convict and I was in jail for 10 years and I just got out 2 weeks ago. And he's showing me his little like convict badge, like,
They
you know,
have a badge?
like an inmate badge. Like they have a badge they have to wear to like identify themselves. Like you're in high school, you know, you're like, here's my badge. This is me. I go to this school. And I was like, oh my God. And so,
this is something I had no reason to know before. This is magnificent. So he flashes his bag like a cop.
Yes. Well, like, you know, like a school badge, like an ID that hangs. Oh my God. So I'm sitting there and it's like Orange County Correctionals, it says on it. And I'm like, okay. And Katie's like gone. Like my roommate, her name is also Katie. She leaves and I'm like texting her. I'm like, oh, hang on. I'm just going to go in the kitchen and refill my glass of wine. I'm like, Katie, come back. Katie, come back. Help me. I'm like, this guy said he's a convict. Just pretend like he forgot something. Come back. I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm like trying to keep it cool because I'm like, let me hear this guy's story out. So sure enough, he tells me the story and he's like, okay. He's like, so I know that's, you know, kind of crazy but I'm, you know, I was in there for 10 years. He's like, you wouldn't believe. He's like, people who murdered people got out before I did, which I totally believe it.
10 years. So like, this isn't like the dude had like a DUI. Like he's like a real.
Yes. So here's what he went to jail for. He went to jail for holding up somebody with a gun, you know, at like a 7-Eleven. But here's the thing. The gun didn't have any bullets. And he said he was like 20 and his friends kind of like convinced him to do it. And he's like, I fully think I deserved to go to jail. He's like, I'm happy that I served my sentence and I did the right thing. And he's like, it was a stupid thing I did when I was young. I believe him. I 100% am like, okay, like, I don't think this guy, but like, there's got to be something inside of you. I mean, that's really poor choices to be like, yeah, let me hold somebody up.
Desperation maybe, but even then, I mean, I've been pretty hard up in my life and I've never traumatized somebody with an unloaded gun like an idiot.
Yes.
Like,
and I'm like,
a lot of things you don't do that's on the list.
So I guess he's changed, but I said that this is not where I'm at in my life. He's like, yeah, we might be in different places. And then it was real cute. Like, I was like, I'm sorry. I don't feel comfortable. I'm like, I'm just going to have to ask you to leave. And he did. And he left and he was kind of shaky about it, you know? And he's like, yeah, he's like, I kind of expected that. He's like, I'm not surprised. He's like, it's going to take me a while, you know? And he was like, well, he started sending me pictures and he's always showing like cash because like the Lee and Ricks people, they will hire inmates, which I think is nice of them.
Convict oyster shucker.
So apparently they hire tons of the inmates.
So really, this is your gay friend's fault.
This is their fault. Oh, trust me. I gave them shit about this. I was like,
I would say it is so good that they do hire people who come out. Like that helps.
How are they going to get a job? Yeah. A lot of them don't get passed.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of them don't get past the background check. And so I think it's great. So he starts like sending me like text messages just to check in and make sure I made the right decision, I guess. And he's showing me all this money and he went shopping for new clothes. And he was like, look at all this money I have. He's like, I'll take you shopping. And I was really poor at the time. Trust me. Part of me was like, I mean, could I date an inmate?
How uncomfortable am I on a scale of 1 to 10?
And he was good looking. Like, obviously, what do you do in jail but work out?
That's true. They're all fit.
So he was very fit. But anyways, so that's one of my stories. It was absolutely insane. Obviously, I did not speak to him ever again. And then this other date I went on, this is the two the worst that I could think about in the moment. I know I've been on worse, but I'm like, I don't know. So this guy I did like a Full Sail film with, and he like started getting like attached to me because we had like a kissing scene. And he even wrote me, was like, I don't know how to handle this. I've never been an actor before. How do you separate yourself? I'm starting to have, you know, catch feelings for you. So, you know, I was being professional at first, but then he like asked me out and I was like, as friends, right? Like we're just hanging. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, but you know, I'm interested in you. He's like, you know, I'm getting out of a marriage. And he's like, but if it's okay. And I was like, all right. And he's like, will you go to a Soundgarden concert with me?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, you know, Black Hole Sun. I was like, cool. Yeah, let's go. So we drive all the way to the Tampa amphitheater. So this is at least an hour car ride.
But you know, like you've met him because you worked with him. So
I worked with him, so it was safer. Yeah. Yes. So we
So
go.
that's a bold move for the first date. That's a
Yes.
long first date because you got to come back too.
I literally thought I have to be in the car with him. Like, I hope we can have good conversation. And then like we get there and we meet up with two of his friends. And that's when I realized I'm taking his wife's seat, like his soon to be ex-wife's seat.
Yeah,
I didn't know if like the divorce had gone through yet. He wasn't very clear. And then on the drive, I started figuring it out and putting the pieces together. And then I met the two friends and then it became even more clear. And I was like, oh, so we're sitting there and I'm like, but he's moved on. He wouldn't ask me out unless he's moved on. Like,
oh no.
so we're watching the concert and we're standing there and we're like jamming out. And I'm like, this is great. We're having a good time. I think we're having a great time. And all of a sudden he's jamming out and then he's like really into it. And then he looks at me and he looks me dead in the eye and he's like, I miss my wife. I think I made a mistake.
Oh, I mean, look, in that guy's defense, and I only say this because I've dated so many guys that are fresh out of a relationship or even a couple that were still in the middle of their divorce, you know, like I was never the reason for the divorce. I always made sure that that was the case. But, you know, like, especially now, because I'm 35. So like, what's available, you know, like people who have gone through things. So I will say that is common. I do give that guy credit for owning it, because a lot of the time what men will do is, or anybody, it's really not just men, what people will do is in an effort to just enjoy themselves, they'll push that down and then they'll end up hurting the other person.
Right.
And at least he had the emotional intelligence to like own it. It's a weird thing to hear, but I kind of do give him credit.
Of course. Well, first of all,
he doesn't know how to navigate that. Nobody's been through that before, you know.
He's one of the nicest guys I ever met. He's harmless. He's very innocuous, and he did end up finding a new love and is married and everything. But in the moment, it was like we're jamming out, having a good time, and then he just turns to me and says that, and I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, not what you want to hear. Like, certainly a weird moment.
I'm like, "You are not ready yet." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So it was a very
like thoroughly divorced before I touch. Like, I won't go near you if you have, even if it's been like within the first 6 months. Like, I don't want to go near somebody that's still in the middle of that, because
they don't even realize.
Kids, like, they don't know where they're at, even, and they might have the best intentions. They just genuinely don't, because they haven't dated in so long. They don't know what that's going to feel like. And I have been in relationships where it went south because the guy thought he was ready and he wasn't.
So those are two of my main stories. Now I know you even have some more recent ones, but I really want you to speak of the one that you posted on your Facebook, because it's incredible.
On Reddit, it's titled, actually, because of all of my friends that posted on, I think there were like 200 comments on this stupid post. It's on Reddit. It is currently called, I think it was like My Tuesday Night Date, directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
Amazing.
Because it's like, that's the level of just fuckery we're talking about. So I've been single for, about a year.
Yeah. Give me a little background.
Yeah, a little background. So I had a very, very painful, difficult breakup that had some trauma tied to it. So I've been very slow to like start dating again. You got to take your time. Long gone are the days that I'm like immediately sliding under somebody else. So I've towed a little bit into those waters, but for the most part, it's been just, screw it. It's a Tuesday. Let's go out. So because I know, like,
I used to pick up dates because I was hungry. So,
well, that's not what I was doing. I
was like, I'm poor and I need to eat. So
I was mostly just bored. I've done the dating apps because I've been single, like not married. Like, I've never been married. So like I've dated throughout the entire.
Have you been engaged?
It depends on who you ask. Sort of. When I met you, I was newly out of that. So I was very young. I don't know if that explains a lot of my psychosis back then. Sort of. Promise ring. We decided we wanted to get married, but he wanted to put a different ring. Like, we were young and poor.
Oh, the promise ring. I don't think our generation does that.
No, they don't. Because it's dumb. It's like, it's a pre-engagement anyway. And we view, like, that's the only man that I've ever lived with. I've always lived by myself. He was truthfully a good person. I was a mess back then. I had a lot of stuff I hadn't worked through. So I kind of ruined that one. And I'll own it. I'll definitely own it.
I don't like to say that people change, because I really believe you kind of like, I knew who I was when I was like 7 years old, but I do believe that you grow in like just so many different ways, and you know, in your life experience and things like that. So
yeah, well, I mean, I knew who
like the foundation of yourself is always there.
I mostly knew who I was for, you know, like, or at least I had, you know what it is I had the outline of who I wanted to be. And I was just too young to fill in the gaps of that outline. You know what I mean? Like it takes, and I think when you go through stuff like that, you go through a phase of, you know, being the toxic person, because sometimes that, I think everybody in some ways goes through that moment where they're more toxic than they think they are, especially if you have unresolved trauma, which I did. So, I was, you know, I've done the dating apps, and
which ones?
Yes.
All of them.
All of them.
I never got to do Bumble.
I did, well, this one was Bumble. I did Tinder for a while, which actually I got actual relationships out of Tinder. I know Tinder gets like a rep, but to be honest with you, that's the one I had the most.
Me too.
And good relationships, like really good ones. Some not so great, but yeah, I actually had more luck with Tinder than I did with the other apps. So for a while I did Tinder because I love that, like, it's so efficient, because it's literally just yes, no, would not. Like that's the psychology, because that's really what it is. If you're not attracted to somebody, that's a friend. So I like that it's like that, and you can't message each other unless both of you have agreed, you know, to talk. OkCupid is not like that. You can message people out of the blue. And Bumble, the girl has to initiate the conversation. And I had never done that one before. And yeah, it's just honestly pure, because I'm an app designer, so like pure curiosity. I was like, I'm gonna start this one because I'd never done it before, and it's not my fave. Don't really like being responsible for that. I like forcing men to do it. It's not my wheelhouse. But I was on Bumble, and on Bumble you fill out all of these questions about yourself, which I did kind of like you see what the percentage of your matches are based on the answers to your questions. So I am religiously an atheist. That is
a funny way to say that. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before, because anything could be a religion.
Well, the reason that I elect to say atheist and not agnostic is that I'm not searching. I'm like a really nihilistic agnostic about it. We're like, I don't know, but I also don't care.
But I question shit all the time, which is why I get along with atheists. I get along with agnostics. I get along with non-denominationals. I get along with very religious people, because I like to talk about all of it.
I do too, but like for a dating situation, and you're on my Facebook, so you know, like,
you have to be.
I'm gonna make fun of it enough to where like I can't date a religious person. Like I'll make them cry. So, so it's not fair to somebody who has faith to date me. Like it's just because I will make fun of it, and I do it not to be hurtful. It's just that's my sense of humor. Not ever raising kids with somebody who believes in church, because we're not going to agree on that stuff. Like it's kind of where I'm at. And again, because I'm a little bit more. I consider myself left of center, because there are things that I am more conservative on. Not a lot, but I prefer to date liberals, because social issues, gay rights, things like that stuff we need to align on. So I generally, I mean, I have dated Republicans before. The last guy that I kind of casually dated was a Republican, Catholic, actually. It did not work, but it's not that I haven't tried it. It's just, you got to have certain ideologies that align, I think, for it to work. You don't have to agree on everything, but you know, I know, like, I hate Trump so much that there's no way.
For the Trumpsters out there, I don't actually understand the psychosis. Like literally this person has put people under his spell, because I'm like, I'm not obsessing over Biden. I'm not like, bring back Hillary. I'm like, let's find a new candidate, because that's how it's always fucking worked. And it just blows my mind that people are so obsessed with this one person. And I'm like, that is power in the scariest dictatorship, totalitarian way that we do not want. We do not want another Hitler. It just blows my mind. Like
I am not I am not a fan, and I use the word fan specifically. I'm not a fan of anybody to that extent. Like, there is nothing, no celebrity, no politician. I loved Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I still wasn't like worshiping at an altar. You know what I mean?
I liked Obama, and I was like, but like, I could chill and have a
cool.
whiskey with him and hang with him, and that would be fine. And I'm
Right.
like, and
But
I
you're
thought they
not
did
like,
a lot on social issues, but I wasn't like Obama forever.
well, and there's a certain point where, and this kind of gets into a little bit of that. There's a certain point where it's a toxic relationship, kind of the way a lot of people have like abusive relationships, where you have such Stockholm syndrome that you cannot see the forest from the trees. Like, there are things that Obama did that I did not agree with. There are a million things that Biden does that I don't agree with. Do not get me wrong. And I think it is unhealthy to have this, to fangirl over somebody so hardcore and to drink that Kool-Aid to the point where there are blatantly ethically incorrect things that totally contradict with what your actual sentiments are.
Mm-hmm.
And to not call them on that. And that's
right.
the thing, is like,
especially the religious stuff. I'm like, how are these religious Republicans on board with this man? It makes no sense to me.
It's a very
and he was a Democrat.
At one point he was, and he said something once about how he could shoot someone in the streets and he'd still have support. He's correct. He knows the grip that he has on people.
Yeah.
And in that way, people underestimate how smart he can be in that way.
Well, and maybe he knows exactly how to say things in a certain way so that he doesn't get in trouble.
He's a manipulative son of a bitch. No, he says shit all the time that like everybody else would get in trouble for. What he did was he targeted a subset of people that will let him get away with anything. And that's at the end of the day.
No, I mean, when it comes to incriminating things.
Oh,
he knows how to make it like I may have suggested something like that, but I didn't actually say. He knows how to get people on his side, which is a very powerful thing. That's why he was politics. Quote unquote successful businessman. But yeah, the power that he has on people, I do not understand it.
It makes me nervous, the power that he has, especially right now. Like, right now is it's always been an interesting time. And from where I sat during his entire presidency. So my first career was as a sommelier and a mixologist, as a bartender. So I worked.
Really?
Yeah, my first book was on wine.
We'll have to talk after this podcast, but yes.
Absolutely. So where I bartended, the last place that I bartended was on Pennsylvania Avenue at the Capitol Grill in Washington, D.C. So I saw all of the generals, all of the lobbyists, all of the senators, all of the lobbyists. And I moved there a month before the election. So I was there from 2016 all the way up until 2020. And then when the pandemic happened, I looked around my dark ass apartment and went, nope. And I moved back to Orlando. So that's like how that happened. But I worked there all the way up until then. So you see and get to know all of these people that are part of this machine on both sides. And watching it from that position was fascinating to me. And a lot of people don't realize that in DC, those people all get along. Like, their kids go to the same schools. They live down the road from each other. But you do have a couple of standout individuals that, are very extreme. And we saw that. We saw it all the time.
Yeah.
I worked the inauguration, and then I worked the Women's March the next day. And that shift was the most bizarre moment of my entire career, just watching that shift, because you have polarizing experiences. I have very harsh opinions on Trump, and it's not against Republicans specifically, because there are plenty of people that I see the sides. I prefer somebody somewhere in the middle, actually, as long as human rights are taken into consideration. I'm pro-choice, I'm pro-gay marriage, I'm pro a lot of things in that.
And animal rights, for goodness sake.
Oh my God, animal rights. So I'm very much in that category. And I'd prefer to see somebody that maybe I don't agree with on everything be able to work within the scope of having, like, you're the president of everyone, not just your party and your base. And the difference between, I think, more healthy candidates on both sides and Trump is that he's not, and he never pretended to be. And I think it was a dividing factor, and it gave platforms to a lot of extreme people. So I won't date Republicans because that are specifically Trump supporters,
Well,
For
you know what's scary about this entire election situation in the past 8 years is, or more close in the 4 years, is there are people that were in marriages
Mhm.
that didn't realize that their
Yeah,
significant other was that kind of person that could be so obsessive over, like the Trumpsters situation. They are a very specific, you're right. It's not just that they are Republican, it's different.
it's a different.
It's like they're looking to be part of something because they probably have issues of their own. And knowing some people think that Trump was just going to take care of their life for them, which tells me certain things about them psychology wise. But there
There,
are people that
there's
are
a
so, yeah.
um,
And in my circle, it's people that, I'm not going to say who they were, but in my circle, a lot of my family members too, it's like they think he's going to somehow pull them out of the mud. I'm like, look, you run your own life. There's only
he
so much a president can do.
like you're not rich. He's not on your side. He wants your
No.
vote. I came to this conclusion when I was in DC. It is that there are people who somehow, on some psychological level, believe that they are really millionaires and their wealth was taken from them. Like they operate as if they're the elite. And these are people who often make less money than the vast majority of people.
That is
Yeah.
exactly what I'm leaning into. And I have
And
family members who think this, and I'm like, you're delirious.
no, you're not. And also he doesn't want you to be, because if you are, he won't be. Like there is a pull. I hate to say it, but wealth requires poverty. It just does. We've never had a society where there was extreme wealth where there was not also extreme poverty.
Good and evil.
There's always a balance. Yeah. And I think that it's healthy in some ways to have a balance. Obviously, extreme examples of that are not great. Extreme poverty is terrible. Extreme wealth is not necessarily healthy either. But what you have is the subset of people that are like, oh, he sees me, he's going to help me because he's saying that. But like,
which is why I say the word
purpose to
lazy,
help you.
because I'm like, who do you think you are? This is the same country we've always lived in. This person isn't going to specifically just bail you out, because maybe you made some bad choices in your life or because you thought something was unfair. The world is unfair. It's always been unfair.
It's been an interesting thing to watch. And that's always existed in politics on right and left. But the idea that, we have these Facebook accounts and Instagram accounts where we are our own celebrities. And every Facebook post is an interview with yourself as if you're on, MTV. Like that's what it is. And it's encouraged people to be able to speak in ways that they've never had before, to certainly group together in ways that they never have before. And I think part of Trump's success is because he happened to hit it at the right time,
I didn't really know where exactly my husband stood before we got married. And no, I really didn't. And like, what I'm saying is this whole Trump era has like changed people. And like, you really see like the real side of people in a different, it's just this new like awakening or something. And that you're seeing people in this different way and like how they feel about certain situations more than we've ever seen it before. And I just know, like, I remember looking at my husband and I went, oh my God, I'm so happy we have the same views. Like, I didn't realize that's really scary.
Like me, and we don't know each other super well, but you know me enough to know that like I've always been very vocal about that stuff. And the reason is I don't ever want to be caught in a situation where I don't know in a relationship, like where people like I would not like I can't be with somebody that I can't have those conversations with
and be passionate about it.
Well, there's a big part of my interests in general. I was political very young. I traveled the world when I was young doing international politics level debates and won scholarships for it. I just like talking about it with people. I've never believed that you don't talk about religion and politics. I've always believed that you should. And I think what this has done is it's brought everybody up to speed on that. Like my dad has always been very verbal about this stuff. Nobody in our family suffers any delusion.
But I mean, but do you guys have the same views or no?
Yeah, my parents.
Oh, well, you're very lucky.
My parents hate Trump more than I hate Trump. Like my parents, it's like a visceral hatred of Trump.
Sadly, that is not my situation in my family. And honestly, it's confused me because I know they have liberal beliefs. So I'm like, why are you on this thing? Like they totally support gays. They are pro choice. So I'm like, you are a libertarian, if anything. I'm like, you are not a Republican. I'm like, if you were to take a test right now, I promise you. But for some reason, they drank the Kool-Aid and it's about Trump. It's not really about being Republican, it feels.
Well, and it's not, because I know a lot of Republicans that fucking hate him. How did we start on that? Oh yeah, we were talking about
First of all, dating. We need to get back into that.
When we were talking about 40 minutes.
Now,
and now you and I are like, we have our own C-SPAN. Yeah, we knew each other when we were both young and, you know, in our 20s and little bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kids, and now we're
well, okay, so obviously politics are important when you are looking into, you know, your checklist for things of relationship. And I believe in a checklist to a certain point. Like when you're buying a house, like, is a garage a deal breaker? For some people it is. Like, I need a garage, I cannot have a carport, whatever it is. There are certain deal breakers. So I do believe a list.
Politics is the carport of my dating life.
When people over list, I'm like, it's unrealistic. So,
well, you can't do that. Nobody should be that idealized first. Like somebody who checks all of those boxes, there's a tendency, I think, at that point to like portray, like what you're doing really is portraying your fantasy of what they are onto them. And that's not fair to them either. Like they are a human being. Like I'm a 35-year-old woman. I have dated to kingdom come. I came close to marrying a couple of times. I know what it is that is never going to work for me. And that's kind of the benefit of dating when you're in your 30s is like you have a better sense of who you are. You're not asking permission to be that person anymore. You know what you want, hopefully. So yeah, so I put on there, and you know me, because I'm a jackass, I wrote MAGA with like the MAGA in all caps and then lowercase ts. So maggots need not apply. Because I just like MAGA specifically. Like if you're left of center, right of center, whatever, we could talk. But like if you are a MAGA person, I can be friends with you. I have a lot of friends that are MAGA people. I have so much respect for those people as individuals, but like, I'm not trying to date them, you know, like I can know them and love them, but we're not sharing a house ever, you know? So I'm just specific about that. Like those are the main things. Don't be religious because it's not going to work. And then don't be a Trump supporter because gross. And that's it. So like, I'm clear about it. Like I'm so blunt as a person. I am out the gate. Like, you know where I'm at. Yeah.
So let's get to this story. Let's do it.
So I'm like, I'm on this damn app and I'm really just bored. Like I'm just, you know, swiping left and right because I'm not taking it super serious. I am not ready at the moment to be in anything serious. I am still dealing with heartbreak. So I matched with this guy named Adam, and I will use his name because I'm not even convinced it's his real name. And honestly, this asshole, if it is his real name, I hope everybody knows. So I swipe on him and he looks fine. You know, I was like, all right, I'll go on a date with you. Fine. So I show up to this date and I dress up. I love to dress up. So I view a date as like, I'm going to be in stiletto heels. I am 4'10", so I am rocking 6-inch heels. I am wearing a dress. Like I have done myself up.
You're 4'10".
I'm 4'10 1/4. Yeah.
I'm almost 5'1".
Yeah.
So my mom is 4'10", but I am different. I hate dressing up. So honestly, oh my God, I hate it so much.
I'm more sporty. Yeah.
I am more sporty.
I love both, but like I just really love shoes. Like so much.
I was about to say your shoes looked pretty amazing, but like how long can you last in the shoes without looking like a baby giraffe? Like I don't know. They better be comfortable.
Honestly, I am truthfully more graceful on heels than I am.
Okay, Beyonce.
No, because like I am terrible barefoot. Like I was dating this guy back in DC, this guy named Bob.
It's just Bob.
Bob's been on CNN, his name's Bob. And I had just gotten out of parkour practice because I did parkour when I was in DC, which is crazy,
what?
Right? Yeah, I did parkour. So like, you know, like the jumping onto buildings and crawling.
No, I know what it is, but Karen, what?
I did.
My cat does parkour.
All cats do. So I'm fine doing parkour and I never hurt myself really. I mean, I kind of like overextend my shoulder, but like that, you know, didn't really hurt myself ever. But I just got out of practice. I get home, I'm barefoot in my own apartment texting Bob. And all of a sudden I stubbed my toe and I broke my pinky toe.
Actually, I've been doing yoga and I've been trying to like focus on my pinky toe. I'm like, move your pinky toe. It's like dead. It's like a dead toe. Like we need to use our pinky toes. It's a useless
it's a failure of evolution.
So you can still parkour, right? Who needs a pinky toe?
That's actually why I stopped parkour, was because I couldn't, I mean, I had to bartend with a broken toe, and Bob's like, go to the hospital. I'm like, they're not going to do anything. So I just like dealt with it, I guess. So that's like I can do extreme stuff and I'm fine because I have more situational awareness. And when I'm in heels, I'm thinking more. But when I'm just walking, I'll hurt myself every single time.
Yeah. I mean, I run into the wall like every day.
Yeah, I'm like that. Yeah. But then I can like balance on a balance beam. It's very no explanation. My mom's like, I don't even understand how.
We might be related somehow.
Possibly. That would figure. So yeah, so I'm dressed up in heels and I go, he's like, do you want to grab sushi? And I always want sushi. So I drive out to this place and it's like a hole in the wall sushi place, which is fine. Like I'm a little overdressed, but not a big deal. So I get there and I walk in the door and the first thing I notice is he has a crew cut, which was not in the pictures. That was not advertised. Crew cuts are fine. Apparently not everybody ditched it in the 90s. So it exists. So the guy had a damn crew cut. I'm like, all right, well, that can, in my head, I'm like, well, that can be fixed. like I'm not like,
you're not supposed to do that going into a date. You're not supposed to fix it.
This isn't like in here, like this is like, that can be fixed in like well, that just takes like scissors, like that's not like I can fix him as a person. That's
okay.
No, I'm never I am not a rehabilitation center for broken ass men. Like that is not my goal. If you're a project, I don't need a project. I've got 1,000 projects that I do on my own. You are not one of them. And so I look at it and I was like, honestly, truthfully, I was like, fuck it, I'm already here. Like, and I'm hungry. So I sit down. And
I told you, sometimes the hunger will take over because when I was I literally went on dates because I was hungry.
Like I hadn't eaten and I have hypoglycemia. So I was like, I have a short period of time where like I have to eat anyway. So I'm like, whatever, this might as well happen.
Well, this is funny because my mom is also 4'10" and she also has hypoglycemia.
Telling you, us midgets, man. But I actually got headhunted to be the Tinkerbell that flies across the castle, like on the zip line.
I was Tinkerbell. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was supposed to, that was like a thing that they wanted me to do because I was really skinny back then. And I was, 4'10".
Of course.
Yeah. So I never got to do it, but it's the only time I ever wanted to work at Disney ever in my life. That's not true. There was one Ewok story, but we'll get to that.
Well, that was one of the biggest dreams I accomplished. I said, it was one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. I said, I will be Tinkerbell. And then I made it happen. And I was like, woo, and I did it. So.
Good for you. Like, honestly, I wanted that gig. That sounded fun. So
if I could lose the weight, I'd go back, but I can't seem to get under 120 pounds. So.
I was 93 pounds back then. I don't even know how that's possible anymore. So then I look down underneath the table and I see these little tiny dogs. And I like dogs. I'm mildly allergic to them, but I like them. And those dogs are hypoallergenic. So I'm all about them. I'm not one of those people who hate small dogs. I think they're cute. Like anything that's a little animal, I'm all for. But it's inside the restaurant. And I did not know that dogs were going to be present. And I remember thinking, isn't this like a thing you would tell, like, hey, you cool with dogs? Like some people are afraid of them. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like a weird, it was a choice. And again, like out on the patio or something I could see, but like bringing 2 little dogs inside a restaurant on a first date is strange to me. And he was like, yeah, they come with me everywhere I go. I'm, they're my emotional support animals. And I'm like, they're the size of a fucking cat, but okay. That's
registered.
Yeah, apparently. He travels all over the place and like brings them. So I don't know how like legit it is, but whatever, they're emotional support animals. Fine. It's weird. Already I'm thinking, well, this is going to be a one-off, but I would have had no problem. It was the decision to not tell me.
Yeah, and this whole date is just you just like discovering thing after thing after thing.
Just like this was an adventure. So, but again, I'm like, whatever. It's this or go home and like watch Community for the 5,000th time. So I'm just going to do it.
Hey, I watched that entire series during the pandemic. So
I discovered it recently. I love it. So the next thing I realized is that he's wearing a Hillary 2024 t-shirt. And I'm like,
who owns those?
That's a lot. And in my brain, I'm like, she's not running again. Thank God. Like, because like she's not going to win. And also she's said nothing about running in 2024.
No. And I literally know 0 Democrats who own a shirt like that. So
it's and also like, even if she was like on a first date, like, even if you're not somebody who likes to dress up, a t-shirt about politics on the first date. And I was like, okay, this is a lot, but fine, you know, whatever. At least we know where he's at. So I sit down and we talk a little bit, and it takes like 5 seconds for this dude to get on this story about how 10 years ago he had sex with this girl, like hooked up with her, and she got pregnant, and then she aborted the kid. And I'm like, oh, we're keeping it light. Like,
whoa,
sure. And so he wanted to like talk about it and how it really hurt him that like he wasn't, like it still bothers him. And I'm thinking like, dude, this is not first date. Like we have not talked for more than 5 seconds. I'm still waiting on my tea. Like
awful.
It's just, but again, I'm like, I'm already here. So we start talking about that. And I'm like, all right, well, this is not light. Like this is a serious topic about something that apparently traumatized you, which, you know, sure, like I get it, but again, first date, strange, sure, going on. Then he moves on to like this topic where he goes, oh yeah, you know, my foot was really hurting me last year. And I'm like, I don't care.
What do you have, gout, buddy? Are you an alcoholic? What's happening?
He does.
Wait, what?
That's where I was going. That part. He has gout. He's like, yeah, they discovered that I have gout. And I'm like, foot gout? Like, we are in the middle of this conversation. I just met you, and I have already discovered your weird ass dogs, your crew cut. I know that there was an abortion in your life, and now I know you have foot gout. And I'm like,
I am not climbing into bed with you ever.
God, no, ever. And by the way, this is not me shaming anybody with gout. Like, I need to make that very clear. Like, if you have gout, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to
gout is curable. It's usually
curable.
A temporary thing because of what you're doing to your body. But so yeah, don't drink too much alcohol like I am right now with my second glass of wine. But I know
people who have had it, like, you know, I'm not shaming anybody with an illness. I'm just saying weird segue conversation. Like
now this is the point of the date that I would start looking around the restaurant and be like, am I actually on punked? Like that would be the moment where I'm like,
But you know that like my weird ass luck, I am flypaper for freaks. Like this shit happens to me all the time. So I'm like, sure. So now I'm just like, okay, well, foot gout, gonna call mom after this, you know, like gonna talk to her. So then he gets into the fact that during this foot gout situation, he discovers that he has kidney failure. And I'm like, fuck, this guy wants my kidney. Like in my head, I'm like, this is what's gonna happen. This is what it is. And again, I actually almost donated a kidney to somebody. So like, I'm not shaming that. It's just a weird topic on your first date. And so he gets into how he's on dialysis and all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to move back to New York to be with my support system. And I'm like, oh, and in my head, I'm going, why the fuck are we here? Like, if you're leaving, like, why are we here?
Well, and fun fact, I'm actually O negative. So my blood type is the one that is universal to everybody. Yeah. But if I was in a car accident and I needed it, I would have to specifically get another O negative person. Yeah. So it's actually really hard sometimes to find that person. And I actually have 2 friends that I know, and I have them like on my speed dial, like just in case something happens to me.
Yeah, I actually, a former boss of mine just got a transplant. So like I am all for, I knew someone who passed away from it. I know somebody else who is waiting on a kid. Like I am, again, not shaming an illness at all.
And of course, you know what? I always tell people not to filter themselves. I almost titled this podcast No Filter with Katie Rose, but apparently there was like a whole bunch of podcasts that were called No Filter. Yeah. And I love to give people grace because I understand if you're like a down to earth, genuine person, you understand where someone's coming from. And you should be able to understand, like, they're not, you know, you shouldn't have to spend 10 minutes being like, oh, and for all those other people out there who might have this issue, and it's like, give people grace. And like,
sure, it's less about like clearing my name, and it's more just me saying like, look, if you have this problem, like I sympathize. Like it's that this is, again, like 30 minutes into this conversation with this dude that I met 30 minutes ago. I'm all about like a serious conversation, you know, and getting to know somebody, but this is a lot for you to vent about your life is what this sounds like. And sure, fine. I already know what's not happening again. So I don't really mind. I'm just like,
you're just listening.
Yeah.
Like, because like you can be very forward. So you didn't like say anything.
No, because I kind of felt bad for him. I was like, all right, because I'm not trying to date this dude at this point. So I'm just like, I'm going to be whatever it is that he feels he needs today.
Okay.
I'll be whatever that is. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. You know, in my head, I'm like, well, now I know why you're single. Like, that's just in my brain. I'm like, well, problem solved. Like, now I understand. So, but I'll still, you know, we're having dinner. Like, I'll still entertain whatever it is he wants to talk about. Like, sometimes people just need a person to talk to. So I'm sitting there just thinking, okay, but I'm like sitting back, like making it clear, like we are not touching, like there's no hand holding that's going to happen. I'm like, you know,
I'm not putting my knees towards you to show you that I'm interested.
No. With his foot gout, I'm not putting my feet anywhere near him. I literally swung my feet to the other side of the chair because I was like, I don't know anything about that. So I was like, I just need to be away from him physically, but I'll talk to him, you know, whatever. And then he wants to talk about Trump and politics. And I'm like, well, this at least I can roll with. Like, this is actually a topic I'm very comfortable with. So, and at this point, that's actually pretty light compared to what we just discussed. All of the things, like, this is actually keeping it light, like things, a cloud lifted. And I was like, oh, something is nonchalant about, you know, politics. Like,
truth.
So he talks to me about how I feel about DeSantis, which I think DeSantis is the devil, and fuck him. But, you know, he wanted to know my opinions on DeSantis. And I'm like, I'm a relatively liberal person. I can't stand DeSantis. And then he wanted to know how I felt about, you know, he wanted to talk about the insurrection, right? Because we're in the middle of all these, you know, like the hearings. So I was like, oh, well, actually, I had, you know, I used to live in DC. I bartended during women's marches. I watched protests a lot. Like, I was there for a lot of them. Like, so he wants to talk about that. And he's like, you know, what do you think is going to come of all of this stuff? And I was like, truthfully, I was like, I think 3 to 5 people are going to take the fall for Trump. They're going to end up arrested. And I think he'll walk free. And the reason I think he'll walk free is that at this stage, because things are so volatile and people have such a genuine loyalty towards him, there would be a civil war if he went to jail. And I think whether we like it or not, the powers that be are more afraid of that than they are about anything. So they'll arrest a couple of people to satiate the left, but they won't piss off the right enough. And that's how they're going to keep people. Like, that's what I think is going to happen. I think Trump will die a free man. It's tempering a universal anger that seems to be permeating this country right now. And that would satiate both sides enough to get through this. So that's what I think will happen. Do I love that? No, but I think that that's what's going to go down. Because I'm very matter of fact about it. Like, I'm not an idealist at all. I just know, I know how this works. I've watched it. And he's like, yeah, you're probably right about that. And, you know, so we got into the insurrection and what happened. And I was like, you know, my friends worked in, like, I was friends with, like, senator, like, they were hiding in the parking garage of our bar. And I wasn't there at the time, but I still knew them. And I knew a lot of people that worked in the city, but I still talk to a lot of the people that I bartended for. Like, I still have their numbers and we text. And I remember being afraid for my friends, being afraid for a lot of the people. Actually, it would have happened on a day that I would have worked during that time. So I would have been the bartender that day.
Yeah.
So it was a trippy moment. So obviously I have, you know, opinions about it. That's just a crazy treasonous situation. And then at some point he's like, okay, well, I've got another surprise for you, because we're like eating mochi at this point. And I'm like,
I have mochi in my freezer, by the way.
So we're sitting there and he's like, yeah, I've got another surprise for you. And I'm like, a surprise for me? And he's like, yeah, he goes, you know, the first surprise was.
And you're smiling. You're like, ooh, a surprise.
The first surprise, you know, he's like, the first surprise was, no, I'm not smiling. I'm like, oh, a surprise. Like, I cannot play poker because I hide nothing, like nothing. And I don't try to either. Like, if you're weirding me out, you know. So he was like, yeah, you know, the first one was was about the abortion. The second was about something else. And I was like, was the third not the gout? So then we get to the parking lot and he's talking about the surprise following me to my car, like walking me in my car. And I'm like, God, this guy is going to shank me in this parking lot and he's going to steal my kidney. Like, that's how I'm going out. Because I low key believe that that's going to happen one day, because like it just tracks. So I'm just like, oh, like, this is what's going to happen. And I listen to a lot of true crime too. So like, that doesn't help anything. Like, I'm a big morbid podcast person. I listen to them constantly and it's like in my brain. I'm like, okay, you know, sure. So I put my like wallet in my car, because I'm like, don't want him to take the wallet. And I turn around and he's like, so I lied. And he has one of those like bracelets, like you remember the Live Strong bracelets that everybody was wearing for a while? And
like the
they
rubber
were
ones.
for like everything. And it's just a blank bracelet. And he goes, so I lied. And he turns it over and it says Trump. And he's like, I'm a big Trump supporter. I'm a total MAGA guy. And I'm
The
like,
reveal.
okay. And he goes, I was at the insurrection. I'm not vaccinated. I had the ivermectin and I swear to you it worked. And like straight up took the horse shit and like believes that it helped him, is anti-vax, believes in Trump, all of that stuff.
And he just like regurgitated this onto you?
Immediately, like standing there at the parking lot. And he's like,
God.
I was at the insurrection. Were you now? Like, great. And he goes, yeah, I was. He's like, I swear this.
You should have reported him. You should be like, great. You should probably be in jail. Have a nice day.
People already had, because he had clients. So he was there with his dog and he had his dog in his little backpack. And he said the reason he didn't go closer to the Capitol building was because he didn't want to get pepper sprayed with the dog. And I was like, oh, okay, you brought your dog to this thing. And he's like, yeah, there was choices. He goes, yeah, there was this photo of me that ended up going viral. And I've looked for this photo. I haven't found it, but I have seen it before, because as soon as he said it, I'm like, holy shit, I remember this photo, because I posted about it when it all happened. And I was like, don't blame the dog. It doesn't want to be there. So I freaking saw this photo of this dude, and his former clients reported him. So he actually did end up having that problem. And he's like, can you believe that? Like, I lost clients over this. And I'm like, man, crazy that would happen, you weirdo. And, yeah, so
shocking.
He straight up like was at the insurrection and everything. And he's like,
this is a total social experiment. Like that's his whole purpose.
He literally says, he's like, this was not a social experiment. I actually really just wanted to go on a date with you. And I'm like, no, that's exactly what this is. It's literally a social, like that's the definition of a social experiment.
This is a perfect example of how Trump supporters are. And I hate to say but
not all of them
lack of certain intelligence, but you're like, literally, you just described a social experiment and then said to me, it's not a social experiment, which is the conversation that I have with Trump supporters often, where I'm like, literally, you just did this. And then it's this hypocrisy back and forth thing.
It's just such a weird, not all Trump supporters are quite like that though. Like, I mean, some of them, yeah, but like, this is like extreme. The cognitive dissonance that you have to have. So yeah, he goes, yeah, I bought this t-shirt. It came in today for the date. And I was like, so you showed up in costume? And he's like, I guess. Dude. He's like, I hope you don't think that this was a waste of your time. It actually was really nice to hang out with you. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Like sure. He actually was like, oh wow, I had
he thought it was
dinner
a good time
with a Democrat and it was like actually enjoyable. And like,
he's
I actually understood.
He's like, you're actually really smart. I think you're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, thanks, man. And he's like, but you're not crazy like I thought you would be. And I was like, yeah, because you are like fucking like you're the crazy. Like, this is ridiculous.
And as much as like I hear you playing devil's advocate in some moments, like this story alone says like so much.
Says just so much.
So many things that like I don't even have to say anything. It's like, there it is, folks. There it is.
So yeah, it's like I have such weird run-ins with dudes, especially, that I wasn't even really that shocked. I was just like, of course this is a thing. And I called, so one of my best friends that I grew up with was this guy named Charles. And he and I we've been close for 20 years. And
is he straight?
Charles, yeah, he's straight.
Is he married?
He's not. No, he's not.
So is that not someone that could be a possibility?
I mean,
sorry, I probably shouldn't talk about yeah, I mean, I married my really good friend, so
I've got a lot of really good guy friends. So I called Charles immediately and I was like, guess what fucking happened? And he's like, I don't even know what to do with that, Kara. He's like, I don't even know where to start. So I posted this thing and I literally started off with like, buckle up, people. Like, it is story time with Kara and get a drink because you're going to be here a minute. Mm-hmm. And it ended up getting enough traction to where people were like, what? And I mean, it's like one crazy story, but I run into the weirdest. The other day, some dude sent me a message, no lead up, no like, hello, my name is. His exact words to me were, you fit my diet nicely.
Oh, that's a pickup line.
That's so gross. Like just ew. Immediately blocked him. Didn't even say hello. It was just like, no, absolutely not.
Like, and who is the kind of person that works on? Like that freaks me out. That's the thing that freaks me out, I guess, is about the world that we live in, how different humans are.
But it doesn't work. That's why he's looking.
Yeah, but when I found out, like when I was young and like figuring out like Fiverr and like Craigslist, when I figured out that people actually had like foot fetishes, I was like, that can't be real. I was like, that can't actually be a real thing. It's like
foot fetish people actually find me, and I hate that stuff. But
it's on the same level as like pedophilia. Like it is a freaking issue in the world because they will like invite you over and they'll be like, can you walk on my back with your heels and can I videotape it? I'm like, oh, this is bad.
I mean, look, to each their own. My youth pastor when I was, because, you know, obviously I'm not religious now, but I was raised in the church, and my youth pastor was obsessed with my feet. Like he would talk about them in front of people. And like stalked me once I turned 18. Like he was a lunatic. I ended up getting blamed for his divorce because he was like in love with me, and I'm like, I would never like he's my youth. I would never touch him. I had nothing to do with it. I am not interested in that stuff. And he was awful. I mean, he was truly terrible.
Isn't that the worst thing about our world is we look like we're whores if we do it, you know, it's a whole Christina Aguilera song. And
I can't stress this enough. I did nothing with this guy. I had no interest at all. I was like, no, I did nothing. Like I was,
but that's what I'm saying is this has happened to me. I have literally had people like, oh, you like my husband. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even see your husband. Like, I literally like never see this person's husband ever. We don't have any times where we interact. We don't go out anywhere. We're never seen. And then somehow they're like, watch out. Katie might be going after her, hit the husband. And I'm like, what? That has happened to me too. And I am the same as you where I'm like, what the fuck? And I had a pastor who was Irish, and I always loved the way he said my name. He's like, oh, Katie Rose. And he had this like Irish accent. And then
Irish accent?
Oh, Katie Rose. I don't know how to do it. Shut the fuck up. So I remember that I was doing this like, you know, like a dance competition at like a fair or like a showcase or whatever. And he was there like helping, but I see him and he's wearing like regular clothes, like jeans and like a white t-shirt, and he's fucking wasted. And he was like, Katie Rose. And now he comes up to me like really sounding like a fucking leprechaun. And I just remember it ruined my image. I was like, oh, I thought he was this like godly man, and he's just depressed and drunk.
Yeah. There are people, like I have relatives that are super religious that are like actually good people, right? Like we're talking like relatives. I have cousins that like foster children, like they are good people and they are Christian and they've got this background, but they use it in a very positive, loving way. And I am never against somebody having faith. I just don't have faith. You know, sometimes I'm like, that'd be fucking nice. I wish I had faith. Just because I don't have it doesn't mean that I judge faith so much. What I judge is assholes. And if you're using the platform of something like faith, which is supposed to be this beautiful, positive force, it's supposed to be about caring about something beyond yourself. And you're corrupting it, as many do, in a way to where you use it for evil. Like a lot of
called sociopaths.
Like at that point, I'm like, I find a lot of those people, not all of them. Again, I know a lot of very good people that are from the church. I find a lot of them have all hit rock bottom, and it weirds me out because it's like, it's almost a prerequisite. Like as far as youth pastors go, they're not vetted. Every one of these people has hit rock bottom on some level. And that's like, you know, oh, and then I found the Lord. And that's the qualifier, is that like they fucked up so bad long ago that now they've got to have faith. And they're in charge of like kids. Like most teachers have to be vetted, background checked, have to have master's degrees. And even then it's hard for them. But because it's the church, there's no oversight over who spends all this time with your kids. And often in churches, like there are sleepovers, there are youth camps, like they're spending overnight trips with these kids. Two of my very good friends, Dewan and Hannah, their father was a youth pastor, and he was awesome. Like he did nothing to me ever. He was just a good guy. So there are people where that was great, but this other youth pastor in a different church And I have to specify that because I don't want these people to think that like I'm insinuating it was their dad, because their dad's awesome. And he's actually on my Facebook too. So for the record, not him, but this other asshole was super corrupt about it. I mean, he literally, the moment I turned 18, he started like showing up at my job, and he just utilized this platform that he was just handed, and he used it for shitty stuff. I mean, he was just an awful person. They have access to these kids at a time in their lives where they're figuring out how they feel about themselves. And kids are, you know, I was very impressionable. That's what freaks me out about it, because I know that like I negatively was impacted by it significantly. But it's, you know, it's not the reason that I'm anti-church. It just doesn't help. I had already left the church by the time that happened. That too. But,
that'll be another episode. But are there any, so has there been anything since this Trump date that has been great even? Do you have any positives? Date stories? Or I mean, I'm still interested to hear.
I went out with a guy recently that was super nice. You know, like I said, I'm in a weird position right now where I'm not really looking for anything. So I'm not trying to shove anything, you know, in that space.
What does that mean to you though? Because like, sometimes I feel psychologically, we say that as in, I don't want to me, what that says is I don't want to put in the effort right now. If something falls in my lap, cool. That's really what that means to me in a way.
But it is for me right now. Like my last relationship, I was the girlfriend I always wanted to be. And I was, because I was madly in love with my boyfriend. And I knew him for 11 years and we were in love. The two of us were in love, and I don't want to get into why it ended. But it was very difficult. Up to this point, he's been the love of my life. So, you know, I am not currently in the mindset to be the girlfriend or the quality of girlfriend that I was in my relationship. And that is who I want to be if I'm going to be a partner to somebody. And because I know I'm not ready to be that, like that, whoever I date, that's what they deserve. They deserve the best of me. And I am not there yet. I need to be ready for that relationship before I take it on, because I don't want to hurt anybody. And I think that you have to look within and decide, am I in that position or do I need time? And I don't know how long it's going to take. I really don't. I'm also fine. Like, I don't really, you know, I've got a beautiful apartment that I live in myself. I've got a great social life. I've got a great life. I travel all over the place. I mean, I'm leaving the country tomorrow. Like I jet off to wherever I want to go. I have a great career.
Do you want a family?
I used to. I wanted it with him, for sure. And I wanted it with the guy before him. I had 2 serious relationships.
So that's not off the table for you.
Well, I'm 35 and I would be a stepmom happily. I would have been with him. He has children. So did the other guy. We wanted to have kids. I have not successfully become pregnant before, and I did try. And I know that women are having children into their 40s, and I commend them for it. I think it's amazing, but I don't know that I want to do that. I might adopt. Stepkids were always a thought for me, because I don't have kids and never really got them. I was very excited about the possibility. I really loved my ex's kids. They were adorable, beautiful boys.
It sounds like a family would be something that you would be interested in. And family's whatever you make of it. I mean, as a person who has had subfertility issues for over 4 years now, I'm starting IVF again next month. And I never thought in a million years I would think about fostering or adopting or surrogacy. And now here I am thinking about it, because as I get older, I'm like, okay, well, when I'm old, do I want some people around me? Like, yeah, probably, because like, that would be nice. You know, you can only depend on your friends as much as you can depend on your friends. So
ideally I would love to have a family with somebody.
I find when you focus on yourself, that's usually when love finds you, because the problem is that women, especially because we're more emotional, just genetically, whatever. That's
most dudes I know are super emotional.
Well, whatever the trope is, but chemically we have our hormones, whatever.
I don't need, for the first time in my life, I don't really need it. And I did for so long, like really did for so long. Like all I wanted was a partner. And I mean, I put myself in bad situations trying
That's
to
what I'm talking about, is women will keep saying, I keep doing this, and they think it's going to be this Hallmark movie, and they keep putting themselves out there, and they're putting in the effort. And here's the thing, I also, with women who don't put in the effort, I'm like, well, if you don't put in the effort, then you're not going to see any results. So there is a balance to it. But if I found, when I focused on myself and I was like, this is who I am, it invited men into my world, because they were like, this is who she is. This is what she's presenting to me. I like that. And the men will find you. If you say, this is who I am, this is who I know I am, this is what I'm working on, then the men will find you who like that person that you're putting out there. If you're like, I'm putting myself out there because I want a guy, all you're saying is, I want a man, and that's all I want. If you're saying, this is who I am, then a guy can go, oh, cool, let me check that out.
And when you're young, especially, and insecure, which I absolutely was. I mean, God, I was the most insecure person in my 20s, and which is part of why I sabotaged a lot of things. When you're that young, you're giving off that thirsty vibe, and it's true. What's interesting, so my sister has been with her husband. They got married in February. They were kind of casually dating at first, and then eventually she kind of decided like she didn't really need to date him. She was going to do her own thing, because they were just in the early stages of like, what are we doing? And that's actually when he fell for her. And he kind of said something. They were hanging out one day, and he's like, you're acting so different, right now. Like, this is a lot of fun. Not that she wasn't fun before, but he made the comment that like she just seemed different. And she looked at him and she's like, yeah, because I'm not trying to date you anymore. And they're married. Like, and they're happily married. And it's just, I bring that up because it's such a funny, like, she was herself. She let go of whatever that thing is when you're young, where you're trying to impress the guy, or you're trying to. My sister is a very intelligent, very successful woman, and she used to try to dumb herself down a little bit because she intimidated a lot of guys. And, and then she finally didn't. And she was like, fuck this. Like, we're just going to hang out. We're going to hang out. I'm not in any sort of a rush. Like, I've already decided, like, this doesn't need to happen. And that's the man that she married. And it's because they were able to actually meet each other in that real, genuine way. And I've never seen her happier.
Yeah, it scares me, because I feel like that's societal. And I think it's something that happened to me when I was very young. And because I watched sadly, my parents fought a lot, and it was just very traumatic, my childhood growing up. I didn't have this like partridge family, or like, people hugging each other and kissing each other all the time. And like, it was constantly like, what drama is going to happen today? Hopefully somebody doesn't get drunk and angry, and it was just like that my whole life. And, I had to find my personal happy. And I think that made me not feel like I needed to. I was so tired from my personal life that I didn't have time to put energy into pretending to be somebody I wasn't, if that makes any sense. So even though the magazine said you should be like this, or the trends and the girls were like, oh, when I act like this, guys like it, I was like, I'm too tired with my personal drama that I don't have time to be anybody but who I am. So this is it. So
it's funny, when I first met you, I was a little intimidated, because you were like that. You were very like, you were just exactly who you were. And I was still very confused about what I was doing. And I remember like the one memory I really do have is of realizing like you were much more secure with yourself. And that makes sense now, because you kind of had to be. I was not. I was a mess. I was such a mess, and I knew it.
Wow, it's so like eye-opening. Like, sometimes you don't know how people see you. Yeah. It's in acting class, they teach you to ask your friends how they see you. And all of the time, the very thing you just said shocks me to my core. So many times, because I'm like, what? Yeah. How am I intimidated? Well, or like, I don't know. It blows my mind.
It was more just, I was frustrated with myself because I couldn't be like that. And I feel
like I'm still approachable.
Huh?
I feel like I've always been told I was
Super. Oh no,
approachable.
that made it worse because you are approachable. And I was like,
Shit.
bitch. Like, you know, no, it was honestly, it was me. And I was like that with any girl that seemed to have confidence. I liked you a lot. I always was fond of you. But I remember thinking like, Katie just kind of like whatever it is that I can't seem to like turn on in my brain or turn off in my brain, she seems to have whatever that is. And I remember kind of looking up to it a little bit. I think you were going to like work on a cruise ship or something. You had some plan.
Oh, I did. I left for a year.
Yeah, I remember that. And you were about to leave when I first met you. And even that, because I didn't move to Alaska until another year. So like even that adventure, I was like I had never done that. It was something I always would have wanted to do, like some adventure that way. And
look, you're doing
honestly,
it
the
now.
fact that you did that, well, now, but the fact that I moved to Alaska was probably partially because I watched you move to that cruise, because I thought it was cool. Like, I was like, fuck, she can do it. Like, there's no reason I can't. But, you know, I didn't know a lot of women back then that would just get up and do that sort of thing. So I always admired that. And again, I mean, I was 23, like I didn't know anything. And it's funny, like when you really look back, people imprint on your brain in ways that you don't even realize that they did. And when you wanted to do this podcast, I was like, there was a time where I spent a lot of time with Katie. You had posted a photo of us rock climbing. And I was like,
we looked great.
We looked so cute. We were so
fit.
God, we were fit. I had Pippi Longstocking braids. And it's just, it was such a blip in time. But, you know, when you're that young and all of you are kind of like learning who you are, you soak people in ways that you don't realize that you did.
I love my 30s because I feel like I know myself better than I've ever known myself. Mm-hmm. But I loved my 20s because I would hang out with anybody.
Yeah.
In my 20s, it was like anything goes, you know, and that was what you're saying. It's like these people enter your life and they can imprint, and you could meet them for 30 seconds. You can meet them for 30 minutes. You can meet them for 30 days, for 30 years. And that was kind of what the 20s was for me, was those experiences. Like you see everything, and that's when you're like absorbing everything and just kind of deciding like, you know what, you're right. Hey, if Katie can do it, I can do that shit too. And that's the time to do it, which you don't realize it. Like we're so stupid in our 20s. We think we're old in our 20s. We're such fucking idiots. Oh my God, I'm so old. I'm 25. I'm like, oh, hell no. Do whatever you need to do now before you get older.
Honestly, I think you and I both kind of gave ourselves license to be young when we were younger. There are a lot of people I know that were like trying to be really adult. And I think for the both of us, the thing that we always had in common was we both knew how young we were.
Just do it.
And we were both like, fucking now. Like, now's the time. When I moved to Alaska, it was my 25th birthday when I landed in Alaska. And I lived there
I've still never been there. I need to go to there.
Highly recommended. Love it.
You've been to the places I haven't been to. Think about that. Because I've traveled a lot of places, but you've actually been to places I haven't been yet. So
yeah, and vice versa. Like we both have covered a lot of ground. But yeah, I remember I was drunk on a roof at actually that house where all those guys live.
Did you see the Turning Red movie?
No, I haven't watched.
Girl, you have to watch it. It's like totally our generation, and like they all sit on roofs and the girls hang out, and I'm like, that's and now people are just texting each other and going on TikTok, and I'm like, come on. The roof hang was awesome.
Let's be fair. We got to do both, and thank God camera phones were shit when we were younger, because there is no proof of any of the stuff that you and I both know we did.
Out the Moon used to be the place to go.
It was fun. But I remember Alex, our friend Alex, he's doing amazing. But he and I were drunk on a roof at 6 o'clock in the morning, eating scrambled eggs, smoking cigarettes, and drinking beer like you do.
That sounds like a song.
Yeah. And he looks over at me and he goes, I'm moving to Alaska for 6 months. Are you coming? And I went, yeah. And then like 2 weeks later, I had a job. And on my 25th birthday, I landed in Alaska with Alex. That's how that decision was made. He's a value to have in your life. And he is the guy that he is. And he is the guy that like, you know, would look at you and go, let's just do an adventure, and mean it. Like he would literally go do it. And that's, I think, knowing people like that when we were so young probably encouraged the adventurers that we were. And it's probably the reason I kind of still am, because I finally gave myself permission to start being the person I wanted to be. And in your 20s, you spend all this time waiting for permission to be that person. Mm-hmm. In some ways, you ask permission to be that person from all the people around you. and including in dating. And in your 30s, you don't. You have such a beautiful case of the fuckets in your 30s where you're just like, I don't care.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna do whatever I want. And it's gonna work out or it's not, but I'm just gonna be who I am. And I think that gives us license to enjoy those crazy ass dates and weird encounters with people without taking it so much to heart the way that I would have in my 20s. Like in my 20s, I would have had that date and I would have like taken it personally that like somebody would do that to me. And now I'm like, this is funny.
Yep. Yeah. It's so funny. Like it happened to you. It was like part of your story. That's the way I always looked at those crazy types of dates. And when I go on dates like that, I always advise people to either write it down or voice memo it, because you will forget little nuances of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I am also, I love to write, and I had kept a diary since I was 7, I think. I have so many diaries, and the ink is literally like bleeding off. And I'm like, I can't read this anymore. And I'm like, I need to read it because it's such good stuff. Like, what was I thinking at age 7? What was I thinking at age 12? And it constantly changes. And you do forget stuff. As much as we want to depend on these magnificent brains that we hold, they do not hold that much information. We only use a portion of our brain. And I'm always telling everybody, write it down, because you will fricking forget it. Like, there's not enough storage in this brain. So write it down. Before we go, do you have any other nuggets, any other quotes or random shit that any guys have said to you? Or do you have another date story?
Sometimes it's not dating. Sometimes I'm literally just out. And because I'm so tiny, like males touch me, like they pick me up. And I'm like not a touchy feely hug person. Like most people that know me are aware of that. I'll hug you if I like you, if you're on my list of huggers, but just because you breathe doesn't mean I'm hugging you. And I love when people are like, oh, I'm a hugger, and they hug me. And I'm like, that doesn't mean I am. Like that. Hold off for a sec. Let me
And
answer.
have you learned nothing from the pandemic? Like,
Honestly, that was like my time, because people would leave me like I wasn't touched. It was great. I've been training for that my whole life. This random dude just started petting me.
wait,
Like I have
what?
long hair. My hair reaches my waist. And he just started petting my hair. I was there by myself. I was not there with him. Dude, bro was just petting me. And at one point he looks at me and he was like, do you like to eat? And I was like, do I like food? And
Like,
he goes,
to
yeah.
survive?
He's like,
Yeah,
you
I
seem
like to
like you
eat
like
food
food.
so I
And
don't
I was
die.
like, sure. And he goes, I'm not calling you fat or anything. And I was like, didn't think you were, bro, but
But now I am thinking.
now I'm curious. And yeah, he was just petting me, like petting my hair.
As a married woman, I'm always constantly trying to create date nights with my husband, and I think those are so important. And honestly, like, my husband will joke when I say this, but like, I did this one time and I kind of want to do it again, but I had us like drive separately, meet somewhere, and then I had us like pretend like we were like going on a date together, and like
Oh, that's fun.
we like pretended like we didn't know anything about each other. So we like literally acted like we are like, so what's your favorite color? And like, honestly, there was stuff we like didn't realize about each other. And we had that like moment, and I was like playing the role, and I was like, and that's my version of role playing. Like, I'm not gonna like dress up like a
Oh,
freaking
no.
nurse or a bunny or some creepy thing at my house. I want to like get dressed up and go out, and I want to feel like I'm still some hot to trot, and like you are still pining after me. Cause sometimes those little like date night type of things, those are really good for the relationship. And it does spark something that like you kind of forgot was there. So I recommend that to anybody who is married and is not single and going through the traumatic dating life that we used to go through, because it has helped my marriage in any case. And even though I'm telling you, sometimes my husband, it's like putting the baby in the bathtub. It's like, I don't want to take a bath. And then once they're in there with the rubber duckies, they're like, oh, I love it. Like, they don't want to go at first, but then once you get them out there, my husband's like, actually, that was a really good time. I'm like, I fucking told you it would be a good time. Trust me in my process.
What is that old Pina Colada song where like they both answer an ad because they're like not happy
That's
and
the
they're
song.
bored, and then they end up finding out all of this. They like show up and they realize, oh my god, like you actually are what I've been looking for. It's just we
And
got
if you
stale, stopped paying attention.
and if you actually listen to the words of that song, you're like, this is a great song. You're like, oh my God,
Great
because people think
song.
it's just a drinking song. I'm like, it's not just a drinking song. I'm
No,
like, this is great.
The only thing about that song is it's like they're both low key like cheating on their like significant other, and then find out that like they're both doing it.
But
like,
they're
that's, like,
not. They don't. Well, they don't cheat. That's the whole thing.
They
Is
don't
like
cheat, but, like
they go to
both
try to, because they're missing something in their life, and then they realize, oh, I really wasn't missing anything. We just needed to create that energy. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, they both still like showed up with intentions, but you know, an old school song. And like, I guess they both did it. So no harm, no foul. But I remember hearing that song and I was like, well, but they're like trying to do something dumb, but you know.
Well, we need to hang out together at some point in like real life person, because I'm sure we've got even more stuff to catch up on. But thank you so much. As we know, life gives us an abundance of topics, so let's do it again, Kara. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been Katie Rose, served straight up with a twist. And your cocktail of the day is the Autumn Fizz. In the spirit of fall, we've got 2 ounces of gin, a teaspoon of lemon juice, agave nectar to taste, sparkling apple cider, and it's garnished with thyme and apple. Omit the sparkling cider from the shaker and top at the end in a highball glass over ice. Enjoy!